Attention. This is not a test. This is your emergency broadcast system announcing the commencement of the annual Open Film Critique Period, sanctioned by the United States of Disney Department of Cultural Regulation. Film review sites, channels, and blogs of Class 4 or lower have been temporarily unblocked. Rotten Tomatoes is still restricted. Disney films have been granted immunity from criticism as always. At the Siren, any form of film critique, including Marxism, will be legal for 12 continuous hours. Blessed be Bob Iger, Kevin Feige, and Kathleen Kennedy. May the mouse be with you.
Okay. That was, that movie.
So we're talking about The Purge, guys. This is
There's no good segue from it. This is
yeah, it's your hack job for the week. And
say if they're not going to do good segues, I'm not going to do good segues. But
honestly, I don't know. We'll get into it. I don't know if I hated it as much as I originally thought. I gave it a little bit more thought. You know what I did? I did what you did the last 2 weeks, and I kind of read into it something I don't think the creators ever really intended. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that when we do our breakdown of our analysis. I'm going to try and keep my coughing to a minimal today, but it's going to be rough. It's still allergies in the air. So before we really break into The Purge, we can talk about our week. I also kind of want to address something really quick about the direction we've been taking. If you've been listening to the show since the beginning, thank you. If you just went back and listened to it, if you found this later, which I think is probably more likely, you might notice that the last 2 weeks we've kind of been moving away from our original intention of talking about remaking old movies. And we're focusing a lot more on rewriting movies that we kind of have something to say on. And I think we kind of let ourselves go in this direction because we didn't want to limit ourselves, honestly. We want to be able to talk about anything that comes our way and be able to bring our take on it. And I think as long as we keep up with the rewrites, we can still be in the spirit of our original idea. And this way, we can change from week to week. If next week we want to talk about an old movie, we can. If this week we want to talk about something that's current, and that way we can talk about stuff that's in theaters. I know that I want to talk a little bit more about Endgame than I originally had planned. You didn't get to see it yet, James, right?
No, but it was, I don't want to say it was spoiled for me because there was nothing really about it from what I've heard that sort of merited a spoiler. Right. But I do know a little bit about it. I'm still going to see it. I'm sure it's going to be a really good movie. But yeah, so basically because I wasn't really looking for anything like any good twists or any things like that, I'm okay with having it sort of revealed to me. It's not going to really change the way I see it.
I mean, I'm not really going to say anything else more here. We're going to talk about it more next week. If possible, and we'll talk about this more at the end of the recording, I actually wouldn't mind doing a whole episode on it. So we're not going to talk too much about it today, but just, expect for spoilers to be coming. So if you're out there and you haven't seen it yet, last chance. But yeah, I that was already a week ago that I saw that. I've just been keeping up with Game of Thrones. I started watching Crazy Ex-Girlfriend on Netflix, which is one of those things, you ever have one of those shows where you always felt like you should have been watching it all along, and then when you finally get around to it, you're like, wow, why have I not been watching this all along? I really liked the first season. I'm on the second season now. I don't think it's as good, but it's still pretty good. And then as soon as we finish recording here, I'm going to run and watch the most recent Game of Thrones episode from last night. And I'm a little scared because I've heard a lot of bad things, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm disappointed. Well, we'll see. I haven't seen it. I've kept myself completely spoiler free. I have no idea what happens. But all I'm hearing from friends and online is just YouTube titles of what happened to Game of Thrones. And look, I'll be honest. For the past year, well, I guess more than a year since they took a whole year off, but for the last season and a half, I will admit that it has kind of gone down in quality as far as writing is concerned, since they kind of lost the books as a guide, since they've like passed where the books are, because they plan on ending and the books are not over yet. Uh, but I still appreciate it, and I still have been having like I've still been having a whole lot of fun with it. And I admire that they're trying to close off these storylines, and they're just dealing with characters that I really like. So I'm still on board with it. I know a lot of people have turned. I really hope I don't have that experience today. I don't think so, but yeah.
Okay.
Anything you wanted to talk about, or should we jump into the Purge?
Actually, yeah. A couple days ago, I ripped through a season of Tuca and Birdie from the people that made BoJack Horseman.
Yes, our friend Ben has been recommending that to us, and I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. I'm going to get on that soon. What do you think?
It's a wild ride. I highly recommend it. I didn't think it was funny at first, and then I started laughing. So the humor takes you completely by surprise. It's sort of more lighthearted than BoJack, and until it starts addressing certain elements about what makes the characters the way they are. So, and I was okay with that. I was okay with at first like just having a very lighthearted show that I didn't have to put too much thought into as far as like how it made me feel. It was just, I'm just along for the ride, and then it sort of makes you feel a little something, very empathetic towards the characters. Very sympathetic towards the characters, and it was a good transition, and sometimes I'm not okay with that sort of like, oh, we're just a happy-go-lucky show. Oh, by the way, this, and we're gonna make you feel like an adult. And
a happy-go-lucky show set in the BoJack universe. I find that hard to believe.
I think it's not in the BoJack universe. It is the only similarities they have is that it was made by the people who made BoJack. That's it. So
they're animals, aren't they?
They're animals. They're plants. They're lollipops. They're all over the place as far as like characters go.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's again, I think it was just a show that it was supposed to be like it's nice and lighthearted, but then it starts getting into the arcs, makes it a little serious, and they do it at such a pace where you're okay with it. And you're willing to see how these characters develop in the next season. I'm really excited for the next season. So
well, I'll check that out. That's one that I actually do want to get into at some point. All right, should we talk about the Purge?
Yeah, let's get to it.
All right, so it's a pretty big movie. I think a lot of people are familiar, if not with the movie itself, but with like the concept.
It's a series, yeah.
Purge. Yeah, it's been going on for a while now. There are 4 movies. We're really just going to talk about the first one because we only saw the first one. So I, for instance, with my pitches, I tried to keep them pretty simple because I kind of admit that there are probably going to be things that I want them to address that they address later on. But, I read up on the plots of the other ones, so I know what happens, but I haven't seen them. I'm not going to lie. I don't know if I ever will. I didn't love this movie. I don't know. I don't know if I hated it. We'll get to that. But
what's hard for me is the idea. First of all, I don't agree with the notion of the Purge itself. I
have plenty of plan for that. We'll talk about that.
Okay, so yeah, it was hard for me to really attach myself to as far as like the concept itself. I was like, oh, this is a good idea as like a fantasy, like what if in an alternate dimension or timeline we did this? But as far as like they make it seem like it's an actual human concept that can happen in the future, and it's it's sort of an acceptable thing that's like, oh, if this were to happen, we'd all be okay with it. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. I don't think you're a little too over your head there.
Well, we'll get into all that, but I think I just want to go through a quick summary first.
Yeah.
Like we typically do. So before I get to the plot summary, I do want to summarize the concept. If you're not familiar with the Purge, if you've been living under a rock, if you don't watch Rick and Morty because they did a whole Purge episode. So the Purge, it takes place in the near future in the United States in this like alternate timeline, where they have the nation is reborn under this new policy that they have enacted, where all crime for 12 hours a year is completely legal. and it's kind of like, free reign. And the idea behind it is like it's supposed to be like getting it out of your system. Like everybody gets the crime out of their system, and then they're peaceful for the rest of the year. And the way the movie presents it, it's like, oh yeah, crime is down,
Employment's
poverty's down,
1%. Yeah.
unemployment is down. It's all very, it's positive in that regard.
It's the answer,
right? And like, so the purge is like, it's supposed to cleanse, but it's also an idea of like population control from a very like not very very I don't know,
very animal farmy.
Yeah, animalistic, Thanos-esque population control of let's just wipe some people out. And I think that a lot of the moral criticism that comes from the movie focuses on this specifically, and not even like on the idea of would this even work to reduce crime. Like it kind of takes it at face value that it will, and we'll get to that later. But that's the world we're set in. Crime is legal once a year, and everything is, as the film presents it, it's great the rest of the year. So the film centers around Ethan Hawke. He is playing a character, and I honestly remember his name. Let me look it up real quick to do it justice. Was it Jim?
Maybe it's Jim. I just called him Dad. Like he was Dad.
Let me see.
And the woman was wife, and then you had.
Okay, yeah, it's James Sandon. So,
okay.
So his name's Jim Sandon. So yeah, he is a a purveyor of high-end
security systems.
High-end security systems, which in a world where crime is legal at some point, like completely during the year, you could imagine that's a pretty lucrative business to be in. So he's doing pretty well for himself. He lives in a pretty good, suburb. He is married to Cersei Lannister, the first of her name, Queen of the Andals and the First Men. And they have 2 children. The oldest, Zoe, she is played by Adelaide Kane. She's really just your stereotypical teenage girl in a horror movie. She has an older boyfriend who her father doesn't approve of. And then they have a son named Charlie, played by Max Burkholder. And he's the kid from Parenting, if you've ever seen that. Great show. I recommend it. But he's like this like awkward kid who's like really smart, and he plays with like robots, and he has this like creepy spy robot thing that I predicted would save them in the end, and kind of does, but not really. Yeah, so that's the background. I'm sorry, I said I'd keep coughing to a minimal, but that's the background. The plot kicks off. They're preparing for the purge. It's the day of the purge. They're locking everything up. They're like gathering in the family room. The daughter is fighting with them over something. Who cares? And then, he's locking everything down, and Ethan Hawke is like talking to his kids, and he's like, all right, like, I know the purge is, it's not the most elegant solution. It's kind of, rough around the edges, but, it really works and makes our lives better. We have to do it. We all support it, whatever. So they lock it down, whatever. They're living, they're in this house, and it's safe. And then we find out there's this little like subplot about how the daughter's boyfriend like snuck in, and he's hiding there, and then he goes to kill Jim, and Jim kills him, and that's it. And if it sounds like I'm like brushing over this, it's because I'm giving this
because the movie does it
exactly as much time as the movie is giving it.
I have one little gripe about that though.
Yeah, go
what
for it.
What was the boyfriend hoping to accomplish with doing this? Oh, I'm just gonna talk to your dad, and he goes and he tries to kill the dad. What if he succeeds? And he's gonna sit there in a house with the rest of the family, be like, now you have to accept me after I just killed your friend. Like this isn't the Vikings. Like you don't keep what you kill. Jesus Christ. Now Zoe, you will take me, and no, you just murdered her dad.
Yeah,
stupid.
So he fails, he dies. The girl's sad about it for a little while, but she gets over it, and that really just serves as an opportunity to inject a little bit of chaos into the house, so that the son has an opening to open up the security gates and let in this homeless man who's being pursued they don't know who's being pursued by at first, but he kind of like gets lost in the scuffle, and he's somewhere in the house, and it's a really big house and whatever. And then so they get a ring on their doorbell, and it's just the most comical villains. Like this kid. I mean, there's this group of, they call themselves like highly educated young professionals. Basically, like picture like an Ivy League academic frat meets the Manson family.
It's like a Clockwork Orange with money.
Right, yeah, Clockwork Orange. That's a good, I didn't think about that, but that's a perfect reference. And they're just like, oh, we have no qualm with you, fellow rich people, but we've come to kill the swine who you are harboring here. So, they search through the house, or the family searches through the house for the homeless guy. They find him, and they're like tying him up and kind of torturing him. And they have a moment together where they're like, is this who we are? This isn't who we are. And then they decide they're going to like keep him safe, even though they were just torturing him a second ago.
They don't even do that. They kind of they just leave him there tied in the chair, and then when the conflict happens, they just kind of like leave him to die.
Right. It's kind of like this half like, well, we're not going to save you, but whatever. Anyway, frat boys break in. They start fucking the place up. The family fights back. They actually kill most of the frat boys. But in the end, the lead frat boy mortally injures Jim, and it looks like they're all going to die. And then they're saved at the last moment by the whole neighborhood, who comes in with the guns and kills all the frat boys. But wait, there's a twist, because apparently everyone in the neighborhood wanted to kill the Sandins the whole time. And we'll get into why later, but it's the stupidest thing in the world.
Oh,
and then
I loved that. That was the only part that I loved was that. And I'll explain it more in my pitch. But yeah, that was the only scene where I actually was like, yeah, this is what makes it somewhat redeemable.
Oh, see, I thought it was laughable. But
I mean, it was
in a bad way, but I enjoyed it. So yeah, so then they gather the family around in a literal circular firing squad. They're about to like execute them, and then the homeless guy shows back up and takes out all the neighbors, but he doesn't kill any of them. And then like he's gonna kill them, but Cersei, in like the least Cersei move imaginable, decides to spare them until the morning, and then they wait it out at gunpoint until 7, and then 7 comes, and then they kind of just like awkwardly go back to their house and plan their next.
And the woman totally won't hold this resentment after getting her nose broken after attempting to kill the wife. They're sure they won't contain any of these harboring hatreds for the next year. Stupid movie.
By the way, he's married to a woman played by Lena Headey. I'm just calling her Cersei because she's Cersei in my mind, which is what it kind of took me out of it. Because like at any moment, like when she was gonna die, I was just thinking like, yes, kill her, kill Cersei, please kill Cersei. I don't know. Maybe she's ruined for other movies from now on, but maybe if she's just in something better than this drivel. Here I am going on about it like it's Moulin Rouge. I actually didn't think that this movie was like the worst thing in the world, but I don't know. It wasn't great. So when I was thinking about how we can analyze this movie, I really thought about it from like we can come at it from 3 different angles and break it down from like 3 different kind of like purposes that this movie serves, right? So we can start out pretty simple. We're not going to get in right away into all the like the socio-cultural political discussion. I just want to look at this as a horror film. Does this work as a horror film? What do you think, James?
No. It would work as like a very subpar horror movie if there weren't so many inconsistencies. Like one of them is, all right, you have this thing where the bad guys have a machine where they have the ability to break down the security system, and all the security system is a bunch of solid steel doors that come down over every opening. And they say they have a machine that can destroy the security system, and
is it a machine? I think it's just
it's a truck.
Yeah, it's just a truck.
Yeah,
like they're hooking up a truck to the thing and pulling it out.
And so, this instills a little bit of doubt in the family, because now the father's, he was toting the security system as, it's a great security system, and then he comes to the realization, he's like, no, this isn't like. this is a very basic security system to keep out the very small stuff, but nothing as to what they could be doing. So it opens up this infinite realm of possibilities, because they don't say they have a truck. They have a device that can take it down, and it leaves the person thinking about like, what can they do? And then the truck pulls the steel door down in the front, but apparently that somehow opens every other orifice of the house up. Because they start smashing through the windows, and it's not even like a thing to keep an eye out for. It just you look and you're like, wait a second, how does that work? Because when they say they're gonna fight back, you're like, okay, there's a funnel system. They can only come in through the front, and all of a sudden they're coming in through the backs, and it breaks your immersion so much. And plus that, and the idea that like the homeless man suddenly getting a soul and saying. These people captured me. I was being hunted. Then these people captured me. Then they were about to send me out there to be murdered. And then they tortured me. And then they finally left me alone. But now now that there's an opening, I'm gonna just stay and save them. No, I would have there's just unreasonable decision makings that just kind of bring you out of the whole horror aspect.
For me, it didn't work as a horror movie because I think that it's overdeveloped. Everything that you're working with, all the characters, everything that's a threat is over-explained. There's no air of mystery at all. It's very clear what everything represents. Mm-hmm. The boyfriend, I guess, might be the one thing that's a little bit like mysterious, just because you could tell they didn't care enough to like give it any thought. But like that was over anyway. But like the educated like youth, the rowdy youths, like, you know what they represent. They're like the essence of this Purge thing. Like they are the Purge personified. They're exactly the kind of thing that the new founding fathers had in mind. So like you're not really too afraid of them because you know exactly what they are. And I don't know, watching this, like I knew they weren't going to survive. I knew they weren't going to kill the whole family. Like what would it say if that was the case? And like maybe I'm getting ahead of myself and talking about what this movie says about like society and what it's trying to do, but like I think it's really hard to separate that from here because it is so developed. They do a lot of work to world build here. They're trying to make, like, they want you to know this is what's going on. This is the world we've developed, and like this is the way it functions, and these are the threats. So you know from the very first scene everything that could go wrong. So when you see it go wrong, you're not surprised. There's no suspense. Like this is what's going to happen.
Plus you have all these different comparisons of, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Strangers. Because there's a bunch of other.
I don't think I have.
There's a bunch of. It's like a genre, a subgenre of horror, which is home invasion stuff, where you just have people that you have no idea who they are, and they suddenly come into your house, which is supposed to be this structure of stability, and it's supposed to be your home, and that's how the sort of that genre or the subgenre subverts that trope, where you have something that's there that is not meant to be there, and is also malicious. It's out to get you. So. They spent too much time on the whole trying to set up that sort of scenario, and then the payoff was just this little, I guess, 15-minute clip of them fighting back. Like, you're supposed to have this essence of the unease of knowing that someone is in your home that's not supposed to be in your home. And I think that would have been better if if there was a flaw in the security system and it was just one person.
Right.
Who, and because there was... I don't want to go into pitches too much now, but one way they could have gone about it would be leave the homeless guy out of it. The family was actually poor at first. They actually hint at that in one of the scenes when he was looking through the yacht. They actually had no money, and then with the security job, they came into money. And so having that idea and having this, let's say the leader of this group, find out about it, and then they start to sneak into his house, that would have made much more of a horror movie, because now you don't know when they're coming in. You don't know if they're in there already. You just have this one guy out front saying, oh, like, we found out who you are. You're part of the scum, and you just happened to disguise yourself. And it says, my men are already in there. And that would have been so much more unease, because you're like, oh, shoot. where are they? Because it's a big house.
Yeah, it didn't feel like a horror movie. Like the end where Ethan Hawke is like fighting them, and like he even says like we fight. Like that felt like a superhero movie.
Well,
Like
or like a horror movie at the last 10 minutes where it's like they finally.
I guess
I'm done being scared.
Even in a horror movie, like your heroes should not be the powerful ones. Like Ethan Hawke was wrecking. Like he
was.
Dies. He dies in the end. He dies in the end, but he took out like he's basically like it's more like Taken than a horror movie. It's what it ends up to be.
Zoe, I guess, used a gun before because she put like 5 shots in the leader.
Yeah.
At the very end, and it's just like he gave the kid a gun.
Yeah.
And he had a street sweeper shotgun. Ethan, it was like a modified shotgun.
Well, I mean, he is like a security expert, and like
true.
He's kind of the paranoid type. So I don't begrudge it that. So yeah, I don't think it works as a horror movie. So from there, we can kind of. Oh my God, I'm trying. We can kind of get into the next like level of criticism where we can kind of look at what this movie is trying to achieve. I think that another thing that this movie is looking to do, and this is one possible reading. You can not accept this, and if when I tear it down on this, you might be like, oh well, you're looking too much into it, but it kind of feels in a way with the way that they develop it so much, almost like a dystopia, like similar to like a less developed like Brave New World or like 1984. The announcement in the beginning sounded very Orwellian to me. The way they
like a survival of the fittest sort of aspect,
right? But also just like the government put this in place and everyone's okay with it, and it's the government's so powerful and blah blah blah. And maybe one day we can have a discussion of Orwellian versus Aldous Huxley, and because I have thoughts, but that's not really relevant here. But yeah, it kind of functions as like a sort of like a warning, like, oh, this is what would happen if we did the Purge. So
if we allowed it.
Right, we probably shouldn't do the Purge. But it doesn't really work for that. So for one thing, it doesn't really work for a dystopia, because dystopias are supposed to be kind of like an extreme version of what's already going on. Like, hey, we're giving away our freedoms in order for security. If we keep this up, it's going to be 1984. Or, hey, everybody is paying more attention to like the new movies that are coming out, and they're paying more attention to like their like sex lives, and nobody cares about like politics, so it's going to turn into Brave New World. Like it's this like this slippery slope that they're trying to argue for. And you can critique that, fine, but that's not really what's going on here either. It's not really a slippery slope. This is just our world, and then this one decision was made, and then it was changed. So like the slippery slope that we have to avoid is just don't do the Purge. As long as you just don't do the Purge, you're fine. And the Purge is just an idea that was cooked up by the people who made this movie. Or, maybe they got it off of some whack job on the internet, but it's not like there are a lot of people going around being like, hey, what if we had a Purge? And then someone's like, oh, we got to make a movie that shows that the Purge is bad. Like, you're just disproving the thing that you're coming up with.
Yeah, it had no build up. It's like, maybe I know the fourth one's supposed to be a prequel to the Purge itself, and maybe it explains it, but even still, you can do it in the first movie where you're sort of hinting at like, okay, well, why does the Purge have to be created? Who came up with what was the reasoning behind it? There's no sort of correlation as to like how this would work and how it would affect the crime statistics and things like that.
This gets to the problem of this movie taking it taking it as granted that this would work. We don't want to do it still because there's all these moral quandaries that we have for it, but man, if we did it, it would work. What makes you say that? Like, when was the last time you heard a defense attorney get up and be like, "Oh, Your Honor, yes, my client killed that guy, but it's okay. He got it out of his system. Now he's not going to kill anyone. He doesn't have to be put away. You can just release him back into society." We don't do
Yeah.
that. We don't do that for a very good reason. This,
I mean, yeah, and I'm not going to really discuss like all the problems with the Purge itself as a concept because again, yeah, this is just an idea that somebody made up and thought it would be a good idea for a movie. But it's having that sort of concept. It seems to me that they tried to convince. Well, I like your idea of having it be sort of a commentary on the dystopian world that we might be able to live in, and then it failing on that aspect because it doesn't really show that transition or like the possibility of it happening. And so in that case, but it seems like it's still like it is trying to take itself too seriously in the aspect that, you know, it's like, oh well, this could happen, this could be a good idea and stuff like that. So it just makes me sad because I like the concept. I like the concept as a storytelling as an idea, not as something we should put in practice, but it's a good it's entertaining to see or to listen to or to hear about or to watch. And I just think they did it so wrong.
When I was originally thinking up my my cold open for today, before I decided to go by the emergency broadcast, I had this other idea that I wanted to do, but I don't think like it would have worked because it would have taken a decent amount of acting for both of us, and I don't know if, you know, we would have pulled it off. Maybe someday we'll be able to do something like this, but I thought of it like as like a room where a bunch of guys are like sitting around smoking weed, and some guy's like, "Hey, you know, it'd be crazy if we just like made all crime legal for a day." And all of his friends are like, What are you talking about?" It's like, no, I mean, like, it'll help everybody get it out of their system, man.
Yeah. It's
No,
like,
that's not how that works. Oh, but
good.
Oh, but it's also, you know, it'll also help us curve overpopulation. Like, yeah, but like there's all these like socioeconomic factors. It's not fair to the poor who can't defend themselves. There's like this whole racial interlude, and then at the last second he's like, oh no, you guys thought I wanted to do this? Oh no, it's a movie. It's a movie I want to make. Yeah, it's a movie about this thing, and it's the Purge, and it's a bad idea, and the movie's about how bad of an idea it is. Because that's what it felt like to me. It felt like the first draft of this was like an actual policy that somebody wanted to do, and then, you know, a second pair of eyeballs took a look at it, and they're like, "Never mind, this is a movie."
Yeah, I could definitely see that happening.
Yeah, I don't know. Did you have anything else to say? Because I can get into the last like little aspect of criticism, and where I don't want to say I'm going to give it some credit, but I will give it like a little shred of credit.
Yeah, let's go into the next aspect because I don't want to get into the pitch idea yet.
So the third and final way of reading this movie is, if you want to say that it still does have some importance, you know, as far as social commentary goes, but it's not fully a dystopia. They're not assuming that anybody thinks that a purge would actually happen. Is that it's kind of, I don't really want to say an analogy, and it's not really an allegory either, but it's kind of like a thought experiment of like, we know that this is how our society functions. We are dysfunctional in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of it that we hold back because we have certain laws that don't let us, you know, behave that way. Here's a thought experiment. What happens if we turn off the laws for 12 hours a year and just see what happens? And then it kind of lays bare our society and how people interact with each other. You know, you see the conflict, you see the class conflict, all of the stuff that for the rest of the year is boiling under the surface. The racism that people think but don't say, the you know, the sexism that people think but don't say, the classism that people think but don't say. In this moment, it comes to the forefront. People do what their hearts desire, and we can see like how terrible it is and how great it is that we have taboos and norms and all that.
And
so from that perspective, okay, maybe this story is good and it represents that. But then that opens up to my biggest criticism of this movie. The thing that absolutely infuriated me, the thing that I saw coming, really hoped wasn't the case, and then when it turned out at the end, I just had to laugh. The ultimate enemy of this family, it's not the crazy people running, like the nihilists running around with their crazy masks trying to kill people. Like, that is not, that is who occupies them for most of the movie, but that's not where the main threat comes in at the end. It is the other people in their subdivision, the other people that live there who are angry at them because they made so much money selling security systems that, you know, they put on an extension on their house and they're flaunting their wealth, and everybody in the subdivision is just so upset about that they want to come over and murder them.
That was my favorite part. I loved that so much.
Please explain why it's your favorite part, because I have to cough, so I'm going to mute now, but like, I need to know this.
Okay, so I also thought of this as a thought experiment. It maybe not so much as it being taking place in reality, but it's definitely a way to show the different ways that people handle stress, and then you turn that up to 11, or it's how people handle problems, and then yes, you crank that up to 11 and see how they react, and you say, okay, you're presented with some feelings or some emotions, and you're trying to figure out how to do, you know, how to handle them. And now we're just going to remove all of the limiters, and you can do whatever you want on how you want to handle those emotions. And I liked it on the aspect because every part of the characters were sort of one-dimensional in the fact that they represented a thought process or an aspect of a thought process that sort of reflected their status in the social hierarchy. And not so much as the homeless person, but he was the most important part from like a class perspective, and they did nothing with him. Well, yeah, but it's the sort of idea where as you go up in the steps of the class system, your thought process on how to sort of handle things becomes different, and it gets to the point where even the smallest inconveniences become the biggest threats to your livelihood. And so when you're low on the I hate using totem pole, but when you're low on the totem pole and
Fair
you're
enough.
Let's say impoverished and whatnot, your main goal is to survive. And so the Purge, let's say presented with the Purge, you seek opportunity. That's what it is. You find, you say, okay, well, everything's legal, so I'm going to steal. I'm going to try to find all the provisions I can so that when the Purge is over, I have more than I had before, so I can survive. So that's a big problem, and it's being solved with the littlest crime, I want to say. And then that sort of inverts itself as you go higher up on the ladder, because now it becomes, well, now I want to protect my family, right? So that's the next one up. It's the next biggest problem, because now you're dealing with the survival of others and making sure their well-being is there. And then you resort to defending yourself. And then it gets even like more open, where now you're wealthy and you want to make sure that nothing happens to your wealth. So even the littlest social inconveniences will make you lash out in the harshest way possible. And that's what I liked about that scene, because this woman, who you would think from an external perspective, the fact that she was angry because of the extension of the house, and because of that she wanted to murder her, right? That is, I think, a very big problem in a lot of the higher class stuff. Now, this is only because I watch a lot of reality TV. I don't know how much of this is true, but it seems to me that because you have everything, you have more to lose, and therefore everything that sort of causes these reactions, or these grand explosions of misinformation, they have more to lose, and it's much easier to lose, and therefore when they become stressed or when inconveniences happen, they have to solve it in a very harsh way because of the consequences in itself can be harsh. And that's what and that's what I sort of liked about that whole aspect. And it's almost comedic. I would
it's
review,
very comedic, but like
I would yeah, I see it as a dark comedy. The Purge would be a dark comedy in my eyes, where it's that aspect of, oh, she said this to me, I want to murder her now. Now, obviously, it's kind of like that now, not in so much as the murder, but the sort of like the backstabbing social vitriol that happens in a lot of the upper class stuff. Because that's all it is now. It's like Game of Thrones. Everything's political and everything's social. There's not a lot of physical stuff.
Yeah, no. Like, okay, I will give you that from the perspective of like a critique of like the lifestyles of the rich and famous. Maybe this is legit, and maybe that's how they interact with each other, and maybe that's a problem, and maybe they shouldn't be so angry at each other. Whatever. This is the only instance of class consciousness that we get in this movie, except for the homeless guy, but they don't even give him a name, for God's sakes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's literally just the people in your subdivision are angry with you. Quake in fear, white America.
Yeah. That's what they're making fun of.
Off. So I know they're making fun of that, but that is your takedown of this system. It's the people in your, like, what about the poor people? Okay, here's why I'm so mad about this. Why are the people? I like the idea about with like a bunch of people getting really mad at the security dude, the dude who installed them the security places. Fine, they're mad at him. But why are the people the most mad at him are the people who can afford his security systems
and they get it installed.
He should be worshipped in this society. He should be a god. He is the person that protects them. Remember, yes, there is a fault in these things, but they don't know that.
Yeah,
that is
monster trucks.
That is not their critique of this. At no point do they say, "Oh, you sold me these faulty security systems," or "Oh, you sold me these overpriced security systems." Their only critique is, "Oh, you know that the neighborhood paid for that addition on your house because you sold us those security systems." Yeah, because he had a service, he had a good to sell, and you gave him the money, and then he used the money to buy a thing. Like, look, honey, I don't love capitalism, but like, you are one of the ones that profits and benefits from it. You are not in a place where you can critique it right here. And I don't think that, like, you don't show up at your pediatrician's house and be like, you bought that Lamborghini off the money that you made saving my daughter's life. I'm going to kill you now. Like, that's
how petty some people can get.
That's sure it is.
I mean, it's an extreme version, but if you were to dial that down, it's like okay, remove the extrema of murder, and you dial it all the way down to just like spreading rumors or just like passive aggressiveness. I think it's a very common thing.
Yeah, but like, we're not dialing it down here, are we? Well, like, this is the Purge. I think it would have been a much, 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 much better idea if instead of all the people that want to kill him being his rich neighbors who are also very rich and also made money off of their neighbors by, providing them goods and services, if the people that were mad at him were maybe his employees who show up and they're like, "Hey, Mr. Sandin, we work all year selling and installing and manufacturing these security systems, and we can't afford to buy them for ourselves. We spend all of our time obsessing over the safety of rich people, and our families are dying in this purge. And, we're pissed at you about it." Okay, that's legit. This is so dumb.
I know. Well, and that's what I find it so great is the fact that it is so dumb, because it's also in the whole aspect of the sense of like, it's supposed to be like a sense of community where, yeah, the neighborhood paid for that addition, but the neighborhood didn't want you to spend that money on the addition. So the neighborhood is angry that you didn't spend it the way the neighborhood wanted it to. And again, you see a lot of this in a lot of like the rural communities where everyone has that mild, I don't want to say like tribalism, but like this sort of mentality that the community is supposed to do stuff. The community is supposed to decide on things. So when one person, it's like in Chicago where you can't really do renovations on your house because it'll ruin the symmetrical curb appeal of all the other houses. It's like kind of like that, except murder.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I mean,
You put up a drying line, so now we have to siege the means of production. Like,
well, the problem is I can't give the movie credit for that. I cannot give the movie credit for this sort of like making fun or commenting or critiquing on the whole neighborhood tribalism sort of thing. And if you don't go the way, if you don't agree with the neighborhood, then the neighborhood's gonna come get you. I can't give the movie credit. I don't think it was going for that, but that's where it could go if somebody made it better.
yeah.
And that's where I find a lot of the dark comedy aspects, where you can take a lot of, because the purge, the purge isn't like a literal aspect. It's the idea of, okay, well, what would people do if they took inconveniences and scaled them up to the fact where they can just do whatever they want in addition to it. And it's funny how instead of having these problems and just dealing with them, they hold it inside, and they were like, well, I'll just wait for the purge, and then I'll just release it then. So it even removes the whole idea of like dealing with your problems in a healthy way. It just says, no, I'm just going to wait for the purge, and I'm just going to release it there, which again is a sort of a common thing amongst a lot of people. They sort of bottle everything in and all their issues in, and then finally when it overflows, or the straw that breaks the camel's back happens, they snap and they do all this crazy shit. I mean, you see it all now with the whole school shootings, you know. So it's a very the purge is a concept of not dealing with bad things in a healthy way, and that's what makes me angry about this movie, because you can take that movie and you can make it. I would make it funny. I would make it a dark comedy, but if you wanted to be serious about it, you could take it in so many different directions, and I think they tried to do everything at once, and it just didn't work.
Well, I think I blew the lid off of any serious pitch that I would have, which is just basically like, have his workers rise up. Honestly, I did not come up with one big pitch this week because I couldn't think of anything great. So instead, I'm going to do like a lightning round. I have a bunch of little ideas that I'm going to throw out. Okay. So you want me to go first because you have something more developed, right?
Just a little bit developed, but because I'm also going to do it in sort of a lightning round as well. So yeah, you can go first, and then I'll go after.
All right. So first thing up, Purge police procedural. It's called 701, and it's like a police procedural, like a Law and Order kind of thing. But what they do is they go around the day after the purge, and they check to make sure that the people that are killed were killed during the purge and not like a second after the purge ended. And okay. like there's this whole subplot where there's like this really powerful political figure who killed someone, and he killed him at like 7:01 the morning after, and like everybody officially is like, oh no, he killed him right before it ends. But there's this like up and coming, detective who's like, I think he killed him at 7:01, and there's like this very specific like in-depth crime scene investigation to prove something as freaking ridiculous as, well, he killed him 30 seconds after the purge, so now he's a murderer. Like, and it kind of just gets at how ridiculous this whole thing is. Okay, next up, a purge romantic comedy. It's kind of like the kid in the beginning who wants to kill his girlfriend's father, but we go through that and it's a lot more developed. He's the main focus now, and he's not trying to kill him per se, but he's trying to like open up the security system to let other people in, because like his father was like wronged by the his girlfriend's father, and he only started a relationship with this girl to like get in there so he could expose the security. But once he got in there, he ended up really falling in love, and that's like the whole thing. And like maybe it could be a musical, and they'd just be like, you purged my heart and shit like that. So there's that. And then there's Super Purge. And what Super Purge is, it's just the purge goes on for like 10 years and it's fine and everything's like totally okay. But then all of a sudden there's all these people getting murdered by like Abrams tanks and like rocket launchers and like all this ridiculous stuff, like not during the purge. and they're like, whoa, like what's going on? I thought the purge was going to help this. And they're like, oh wait, like weapon class 10, like that's still restricted, and like people, they're not getting out all of their beast on these like high class weapons. So like maybe every 5 years we have to have a super purge where like you can use like nuclear bombs if you have access to them. Oh. So they do that, and like after one of them the entire society collapses, and the movie ends with it being like 701, and then they're like, oh, we have to stop purging, and then they look around and they're like, wait a second, we destroyed the entire system that keeps this in place, so we can just keep killing each other. And they do, and then humanity ends. And then the last one, which is a little bit more developed, is the Purge game. It's a video game. And the original idea, I wanted to have like a multiplayer online Purge game where it's like almost like a battle royale, but instead of the thing shrinking, you have a purge where you like spend most of the time like building shit up and everybody's like getting along and then they're fine. And then as soon as the purge turns on, you can kill each other. Okay. The problem with that is that it would be extremely boring for the rest of it, especially if you're trying to be like to scale of how much time is purging compared to what's not purging. So I threw that idea out, and I decided to go with a much more narrative-driven game, the Purge game, where it starts out like right before the purge, where you're like kind of like the kid of the Sandins, but you're almost as if the son was the older one. So you're like a 17-year-old guy or gal. You can change. We can make you choose it if you want to choose it. And your father's like teaching you about purge stuff and like, oh, here's how you defend yourself. So that's the tutorial. And then the purge happens and they break in and they kill your whole family and you survive. And you're all, you're distraught. And then you get out. And that's only like the very beginning of the movie, and then the game, and then the rest of the game, you fall in line with this group of rebels, and I haven't named them, but basically what they do is they're trying to stop the purge by committing crimes for the rest of the year to try and convince people that the purge doesn't work. So it turns into like a Grand Theft Auto kind of thing, where you have to like run around and commit crimes, but you have to make sure that they don't think that you're part of this like this rebel thing, because then they'll be like, oh, well, the rebels are the problem. So you have to wear a bunch of disguises and commit different crimes. So like you're trying to create as much chaos as possible during the non-purge times, so that everybody's just like, well, the purge doesn't work, screw it. And that's it. Those are my pitches.
Okay. I think it's I like how it's all centered around on I guess mine too. It's all centered around on the idea that the purge sucks. The idea of the purge just sucks, and it's stupid.
Honestly, yeah, everyone has that in common.
So what I got is Netflix series. It has to be a TV show.
So they are making a Purge TV show.
Okay, well,
it might even be out. I have no clue. I don't care.
Okay, disclaimer, I haven't seen nor heard of this, so this is, if there's some overlap, then this is plagiarism on Netflix's part. So, listen up, Netflix. What you do is, you make it a dark comedy, and you say, all right, you're going to take the outlandish personalities of every single aspect of the class system, and you crank it up to 21, and you say, okay, what is the most unrealistic scenario in which somebody could freak out when an inconvenience happens? So I'll just give a couple examples. So you have one of the episodes is you go to an urban area, and there's this guy, and he's like a kid. He's like 17 years old, and he's hanging out with his buds, and they're like, wow, like the purge is coming up. What are you going to do? And they're like, I'm going to get myself a new Xbox, a new TV, and he lists off a shopping list. Right? And he has a shopping list of all the shit that he wants to get. So these people, they view, like I said before, they view the purge as an opportunity to get more than what they have now. So that's how they sort of treat it. And we see a lot of these. So the episodes, what they do is they sort of set up a pre-purge, and they show what everybody is doing before the purge happens, and then the climax happens. And when the Purge actually goes on, everything's like rapid fire, and we see all these different storylines sort of come together in this Purge moment. So when the Purge happens, this guy, well, before the Purge, he goes out and he tries to buy all these weapons, and he's buying all these weapons, and you see the receipt, and the receipt's like, let's say, I don't know, $3,000. And he's like, okay, I'll pay that much. And he pays $3,000 worth of weapons. The Purge happens. He goes to the stores and he steals about $1,200 worth of stuff. And he's like, job well done. And he goes away. And you got another one where it's a business guy, and he doesn't. He sees like a lot of other rival businesses, and he doesn't want to get his hands dirty though during the Purge. So he pays a hitman who's a priest out of the Purge. And in the Purge, though, he's a hitman who you pay to kill people for you. So this business guy sees the Purge as like a business opportunity to get ahead of himself and murder the other business rivals. So he pays this priest to murder the other business people when it's okay. And he can sit back in his safe house. And then you cut to another thing where it's these high-class people and these...
So is this like, sorry to interrupt, is this like kind of like a Rashomon kind of thing where like it's episodes, it's all the same Purge, but every episode is a different character's perspective on this one Purge?
Yeah, and then the climax, or near the end of the season when the Purge actually happens, you see like just cuts of everybody doing everything, because it's supposed to represent chaos, so like all the jump cuts sort of make sense, and in like maybe 2 to 3 episodes you see what everybody does during the Purge, and then the final... at the end of the season is the aftermath. Like, did some succeed? Did some fail? And stuff like that. And it's like, what did they really gain out of the whole thing? And like, was it really worth it? And so, and then one final example is they're at an elegant dinner party, and this one woman said something inappropriate to the other woman, but didn't know. So he was like, "Oh, your dress looks extra floofy today," and she's like, and in the back of her head, she's like, "She's told me my dress was floofy. I'm gonna murder her." And then just goes through that storyline.
Wait for the Purge, bitch.
Yeah. And it's just this sort of like high school-esque backstabbing, except high society class. Then you have your cult leaders who think it's like the Purge is an actual Purge. And you have the house guy who's you have another dude who's like, let's say I don't know, you have, I was discussing this with Lexi. They said like the aspects of the dog catchers where the rich people pay other people to round up the impoverished and sort of take them to the place to be tortured. Mm-hmm. So like that's a pretty good aspect, and that's sort of especially for the underclass people, they're trying to go around and steal all this stuff, and they're like, wait, watch the dog catchers, and then you see the dog catchers roaming the streets and whatnot. So like there's some interlocking tension there. And there's another guy who like owns a hardware store, but during the Purge he like sells guns on the black market. And it's just like, so you can see like sort of a sub economy going on as the Purge is taking place, and then it just transforms back. So like all these different working parts, and it's a lot more than, oh, Purge equals anarchy and crime. In fact, the Purge is just another society under the current society, and it just wakes up. And in this case, the Purge is 24 hours instead of 12 hours, so you get a little bit more episodic time. But I think that'd be really good for a TV show, because the Purge isn't just a movement; it's actually its own microcosm, and that's how I would do that.
All right.
And everything would be exaggerated and obviously not true, and that's where the sort of the dark comedy goes into it. Like, because they've been in the Purge so long, they kind of play it off as just like another thing, you know. And yeah, that's how it would be.
All right. Well, yeah. Do we have anything else to say about the Purge?
No. This a giant disappointment.
It was bad. I tried to pretend for a second like it wasn't, but no, it was bad.
And I'm sure the other movies do it great justice. Woo. But
yeah, I mean, you can brief little summary. The second movie actually like focuses more on what like happens to the poor during the Purge. So, you know, maybe I would be more interested in that, and maybe I'll give that a shot. The third movie is about like a presidential candidate who's trying to end the Purge, and all the people are trying to kill her. And then the fourth movie, which actually has a decent amount of like undertones about like discussion of racial dynamics is about like the implication or the implementation of the purge and like how it came to be. So honestly, every one of them sounds like it would probably be a better representation of this idea than what we got. It's just like a family of rich people quaking in fear because the people in their subdivision don't like them. But yeah, no, they didn't get great reviews. Maybe I'll watch them someday. Maybe we'll have a sequel to this episode. And we'll talk about them all, but we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so for next week, I want to propose we do a whole Endgame episode.
Endgame? Okay.
What do you think? Do you think you can see it in preparation?
Yeah, I'll have adequate transportation for this weekend, so I'll be able to see it.
Okay. And maybe I'll even see it again this week. I've already seen it once though. But cuz when we initially discussed Endgame 2 weeks ago or maybe 1 week ago, before I had seen it, I thought, we don't need to talk about it. It's just going to be good. But after seeing it, I was a little disappointed. I still thought it was good overall, but there's definitely stuff that I can talk about that I wouldn't mind if it changed a little bit. So yeah, I think that there's definitely plenty of fair game there.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try my best to. Well, no, I'm gonna see it. I'm gonna commit, and I'm gonna get out of my apartment and take a bus, or have Lexi drive me, or it's whatever. I'm gonna see it this weekend, and now that it's sort of kind of a relief. I don't like having this happen to me in every movie, but when you have a movie sort of revealed to you, you don't. When you go and see it for the first time, now that you know what sort of is going to happen, you can now start looking at it as if you watched it a second time with with an analytical eye rather than a mesmerized entertainment eye. So
that's true.
I'm gonna go in it like that and salvage what I can from the movie and see because apparently I heard it was good and I want something entertaining but also something that I can think about.
All right, perfect. Well, that means if you're out there listening and you haven't seen it yet, you got another week. But make sure you've seen it. All right. I think we're good. Till next time, everyone.
Bye.